evening by going around the table and introducing ourselves. My name is Paul Coogan. I'm the mayor.
I'm Patty Rigo, Executive Director of Viva Fall River.
I'm Olivia Pexoda, the Special Projects and Media Coordinator.
John Williams, Dean of the Charlton College of Business, UMass Dartmouth.
And I'm Paul Bagdian, and I am working with Dean Williams on this project.
And I'm Tyra Lee. I'm District Director for Representative Carol Fiola.
Great.
Okay, so what we're doing today is releasing a comprehensive tourism report that we had partnered with UMass Dartmouth, especially the Charlton School of Business, related to travel and tourism in the city of Fall River. So we have a press release. We're going to post the report online. Patty and I just talked about that so that everyone can see it once we get done with this press conference, so hopefully later today. But I'd like to turn it over to John first so we can talk about how this all came to be and where we ended up.
Well, I started my position 3 years ago, and in the midst of COVID, and I had a chance to get around the community and talk to people, and tourism came up, and it was a subject with my background in tourism and doing economic impacts. I thought, well, I'll get out in the community and see where this goes and see if there's interest. Well, there was great interest, and I might start by saying that I've done a lot of these studies in the past. I was in New Orleans, and we did everything. We did the states, we did those economic impacts, we did visitor profiles, we did it for all of New Orleans. And what you need is a real spirit of cooperation, and I'm thrilled at what we encountered here and how ongoing it was. It's that spirit of cooperation that you get places. So you probably want to know what is an example of that. Well, when we started to get into the data, it's good to also get anecdotal data in addition to the quantitative data. We can get quantitative data, we can crunch that out and do things. It's the anecdotal data that's difficult to get, and that's by stakeholders and partners who are really embedded in tourism and have the desire to do that. It was forthcoming, it was all the way through, it still is, and I want to give you an example of that where as we started to look at the results, we realized that what Fall River has is very tremendous. And we have a tendency in the north to think, well, you know, we have a season and it's typically the warm season, and we tend to disregard the rest of the year for many reasons. Well, it happens that on the shoulders of that warmer season is enormous potential. And the stakeholders realized that, and we started a great conversation on it. We also talked about going in and actually making incisions into the year, such as the holiday season, New Year's Eve, things like that, that have just enormous potential. That would have never been realized if we didn't have those stakeholders coming forward, sharing their ideas, getting somewhere with that, and starting to go after that. I can tell you the fruits of that are tremendous. So to give you a kind of reverse situation, in New Orleans we looked at the seasonality, and it's the reverse. So summer, hot and humid. Right now it's blazingly hot and humid. So that was our area to go and really target, which we did. We went after that and we thought we're going to do something about this. So we started to place, we had so many festivals in the rest of the year. When you look at a place like New Orleans, sure, they have Mardi Gras, they've got the French Quarter Fest, they've got the Jazz Fest, but there's so many other festivals. And they were choking themselves. So what we did was we went to those festival providers coming on board new, and I would take them and introduce them to the entire hotel association of where to put those in the summer season and target those. We turn summer, now summer is just like any other part of the year, the seasonality is gone. So really, we couldn't do that if it wasn't stakeholders with their cooperation and starting to talk about ideas of that. So I just want to thank everyone at the onset of this. That's what gives research like this legs to have it go on and really start to get somewhere. So I'll leave it at that for an introduction.
Thanks, John. I'd also like Patty Rigo to comment. She kind of spearheaded this effort in conjunction with Viva Fall River
Sure,
and the city of Fall River. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I think, we went it wasn't like we were waiting for the research in order to start doing work. We definitely had some assumptions, and I think in some cases the data definitely supported some of the things that we're targeting. Certainly the culinary culture of the city, certainly looking at some of the restaurant data and seeing that that's something that people are not only interested in, but that they are actually actively coming to the city for. And other things that, there were a couple other things that gave us pause, and now we're able to adjust some of those strategies and see how we can move forward. Specifically, I'm glad that you mentioned seasonality, John, because we are already thinking about, the holiday season and how do we bring visitors in during the colder months. Using different assets, maybe not our waterfront because that's very seasonal, but how do we, highlight some of the other things like our historical tourism, and then gearing up for next year, really wanting to do a little bit more research and to do a little bit more, get a little more insight on recreational tourism. How do people even know about some of our more natural assets? And so we have a lot of room to grow, and I think that's what I took out of the research report, and it's given us some. It has given us some assurance to our assumptions, which is what you need when you want to get grants, which is what you need when you want to move forward. Assumptions are nice, but data is definitely better. So.
Right. I think the focus, Fall River, like I said, this is small steps for Fall River coming forward. When you look at the visitor profile, you look at data-driven opportunities for people to come to Fall River and spend money. It's funny because we've been doing a number of things. And just the other night, we were at Father Kelly Park for our summer concert series. And I was walking around the park talking to people, and there were people there from Somerset, which really wouldn't probably even come over and enjoy a concert in Fall River on a Wednesday night. But they were sitting there, and last night we had a very successful kite night down on the city pier. It was great. There was a lot of people there, a lot more than I think most of us anticipated, and it turned into something. And when we see potential for things like that and for the things we're trying to do, I know recently we were up at the in the reservation looking at the Adirondack Farm and think about what we can do there to promote outdoor lifestyles and tourism in the city of Fall River, whether it's hiking, using some of our existing waterways, whether it's Cook Pond or any of them. Mm-hmm. We're gonna go across the city with this, and we are gonna keep it going, and I think it's gonna be very, very important for the long-term future for the city of Fall River. That's what we're looking at. We're not looking at this summer, we're not looking at next summer. We're looking at how do we build a base for the tourism industry to expand and flourish in the city, and that's where we are. And that's what this is about today, the release of this report.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, we had some, that, there are more community focused events like the summer evenings in the park, which are meant for the residents, because that also adds to the, to the spirit of the city and what makes people want to come. You can have beautiful buildings and beautiful places to go, but you also need that welcoming community, which we do have. So it's nice that we have things that there are obviously initiatives that are geared more toward the greater Fall River area, or maybe even southeastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island. But there are also opportunities that extend beyond that, and the research showed us some of those pockets, either in other areas of the Commonwealth or even in such places as Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. Those have actually shown us some areas of activity. So obviously that's not, we want to go for the things that we have closer to us, but as we move ahead, there'll be more opportunities. And so I think that's something also that the research was able to help me kind of pinpoint where we should also be looking toward in the future.
Right. And one of the things from the report that I took away from it was the retail amount of people that come and spend their money in Fall River on the retail end of it. We all think of almost like the entertainment part of it, the restaurants, the parks, the festivals, the things that we have going on, but the retail numbers were a little bit startling to me because I did not know we were able to pull that much from it. But again, we're going to make the full report available to everybody that wants to go over it and read it and offer comments and suggestions. And I think that that's the best way going forward. Keep it open, keep it transparent, and see what we get back for feedback. You have to remember in Fall River, we've had a number of traditional feasts. There's one this weekend at St. Michael's. We've had the Day of Portugal. We've had the Holy Ghost Feast. Now that we're sprinkling in these other events, whether they're the concerts on the pier or the concerts in the park, a Christmas concert, the things we're looking to expand maybe something with our Victorian homes. There's things we're looking to do to bring people to Fall River to enjoy it as a city, and that's going to be the focus of our tourism drive. Working with Patty and the people at Viva and FRAC, we can really make this work, and we're going to keep doing it. And we do not expect to click our fingers and have this done in a day. This is going to be a long process with our partners at UMass, which I'm very pleased that we are working with a local university to help drive this wagon, and we'll see where we end up.
Mayor, you bring up some good points, and with that retail, it's 25% that's a non-Fall River individual, and that's sizable. And what we try to do is the research comes in, we try to put perspective on what it is, and we compared it against natural. So 2.3% of all the visitors to Fall River are international visitors. 47% of those come from Canada. Well, Canada's right there, so you can market easily to that. So I said 2.3%, and you probably think, you're used to that, and oh, that's a small figure. When you think about it, that's 2.3 people per 100. It's a sizable figure. So to put it into perspective, when you look across the nation, and all of those that really monitor their tourism, when you hit 4%, you're dancing out in the street. You go wild. 4%, that's 4 people of 100. You're already at 2.3. That is amazing. So that's a market with a little bit of capitalizing on it. You can groom that market to become something great. So within the figures, there's a lot of them that kind of hang low on appearance until you start to look at what your competition is nationally, and then you realize, wow, we've really got something here, and that's what we can help you with. What has potential, what seems to be a low liar, but actually has the potential for enormous growth. And there's so much of that here. And when we looked at the restaurants, wow, when you talk about beverage and retail, and then the restaurants as themselves, it's a major portion of what's going on. And that's why you're pulling so much from places like Rhode Island. There they are right there. They're hopping up to the fabulous restaurants here. So that's just a sizable market in itself. And I've looked at a lot of figures from my positions before and do comparisons across the nation. I can tell you what you have here is right. And you can see when you look at the report, there's analysis of those limited service restaurants going up to full service restaurants. And within those segments of it, there's also great potential for that. Your full service restaurants are highly desirable. There's certainly times that they even cap out in the season where you can't even get into them. Well, it happens to be the case of around you, they can't get into them. They also can't get into the hotels. You've got Newport, Rhode Island sitting there. This past season, not this summer, but the past summer, it was in the top 6 in the nation for hotel rates because they were allowed to just go really high with the hotel rate. You use things like that to see what's going on around you and what you can glean off of that. People come into Newport, they have no place to stay. They get fooled. They come there and they think we're going to get a hotel room. No. They think they're going to get into a restaurant. No. So here it is in this jewel of a city offering phenomenal restaurants and cuisine. That is a huge place to go after. It's already doing well, but there's so much room for growth in that, and that's what we look at. Where's the growth factor? What can be done here? How can we extend that out? So that's just some ideas around that. Paul, you've got a lot of ideas also.
Well, one of the things that's been striking to me is that there are some attractions here that are really very successful already and that serve as anchors for bringing people in. And I would count among that the Battleship and the Narrows Performing Arts Center, as well as the Lizzie Borden House. And those are sort of 3 that have a lot of recognition beyond immediately just the city or even just the towns next door. People in Newport, people in Providence, all know about that up into the Boston suburbs. So it seems like because those are generating steady and healthy levels of traffic, and there's also the restaurant scene, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to cross-market between people who come for restaurants, but why not stay for a show, or people who come for a show, but why not stay for dinner? And so that's another opportunity. And because those attractions are really kind of year-round, evergreen activities, and so is restaurant dining, that seems like a sort of a match made in heaven.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, anybody else have any questions before we?
So, I did read the report, and it looks like your data was basically coming from those 3 attractions, but you use zip codes.
Right.
I know that you did some surveying, but that wasn't included in this report. Is there a reason for that, and how accurate is just using zip codes when you're trying to profile a tourist?
Right. Well, there's definite limitations on the data that we did have, because we're taking limited data from each of those different attractions and then trying to sort it out. The zip codes is one of the things that's comparable across all of them, and so we had a complete data set that way. The surveys have actually been done. We've got several different events that we've actually surveyed, but that's still in a sort of the process of data entry and analysis. So towards the end of the summer, we're going to release that as well.
Will you be, since now is, it's tourist season, will you be doing more surveying now that, with more activity? Or
We're going to be
is
doing
that
a
like-
limited amount, but not a ton yet.
And that will, and I gather you'll take that information and analyze it like what was done with the zip codes in this
Right,
report?
right.
Okay. How
And-
accurate is the zip code data when you're?
I don't know, I think it's pretty good. I mean, if the question is where are people coming from, then you can really use that to identify hotspots. And if you saw in the maps, I mean, we kind of color coded the ones where there was more intensity. West Warwick, for example, there's a lot of people that seem to come from there,
Really?
right? Yeah. So,
And zip codes become very important when you're looking at the 50-mile radius. So the 50-mile radius is what's accepted nationally when you go for grants, especially larger grants. They dictate that that's a true visitor with that 50-mile radius. They consider anything within that 50-mile radius to be called what's displacement. In other words, they say if I'm a resident and I don't spend my restaurants over there here in this restaurant, my funds in this restaurant, I'll go to something else, I'll buy clothes or doing something. It's simply displacement of dollars within the area. So zip codes become very important when you're looking at that radius, especially if you're going after grants at some point in time. And that's when they come in. I do want to add on that we will be doing actual intercept surveys. So we'll be out there and we'll do this to kind of eliminate any seasonality scope on this. So we'll do this throughout the year, and we'll actually be out at times, not simply in a venue, but actually on the streets, capturing visitors, and that's what you do. You do those actual intercepts and you get your information there. Our intent in the long run is to create a real visitor profile, so we can see exactly what's going on with their income brackets, household income, their age, their activity desires. I'll give you an example. We had 33 major activities in New Orleans that we captured. We could tell at any given time what was going on there with all of those. So those were major attractions, and we had broader lists that kind of like flowed off of those. But that will take some time to get what we would say we can put our thumb on that. That's a true visitor profile. And where that takes you is we did the 5-year projections for the state of Louisiana. We did them for all of New Orleans. We could project out 5 years on what visitation was going to be once you get those visitor profiles. So it is key because you can see what's going on. Now, I can tell you this, we also partnered with the CVB. So the Convention and Visitor Bureau would actually have a database of people coming in. They'd share their emails, and we did pre and post visits. We knew their expectations coming in to the city and into the state, and then we gauged it on how they thought their visit went. So we did a pre and a post. So those become important. So I want you to know that as we move into this is our direction of where we're going to go. so that we can be really certain of what we're producing and what the potential is. But I can tell you this already, there's tremendous potential here in Fall River. It's outstanding when you look at what's going on.
So you're saying that this report is just the start of this
This is simply
research?
seminal
That's
work.
Okay.
This is just a beginning, because as I mentioned in the beginning, you need stakeholders to open up. We've got requests into hoteliers and to restaurateurs to try to get at some of their historical data. But that's where we need a more cooperation among the stakeholders as we do our other of actual intercepts and pulling in that information.
As far as hotels, I mean, we've got one. We've got one. And I know, you explained this is just the beginning of the research, but how, and obviously I saw the tax revenue from the rooms tax, and not surprising, we're not making much on one hotel. But how do you, because we've got Route 79, and also that things are gonna expand as far as, what will attract people here. Do you have, is your task in any of this to try to bring in more rooms, bring in a hotel, bring in, maybe more diverse restaurants? I mean, is that?
That's a great question. So we did not task that to begin with. At the beginning, we usually don't do tasks to go in and specifically find out things with the different sectors and segments of what tourism comprises. But it popped up. So obviously, there's a dearth of hotels within Fall River. It's one of the reasons I brought up at the beginning that when you look at Newport, you're looking at a city that was number 6 in the nation last summer season for the highest rate in the entire nation. That creates overflow. So you start to think, what's going on? Is there overflow? Can I justify it? And then you look at the segments of the restaurant. So I just want to give you an idea of, if you're going to do that, that's a complete study in itself. When you look at, let's look at hotels. You start at luxury, the very top of that. Then you go to upscale. Then you go to full service, mid-scale hotels. Then you go to basically limited service hotels. Then you come down and you're in the long visit, extended stay, and then you go to economy. So right there, you've got 6 layers of hotels. If someone were to decide they want to do a study on this, I'd be glad to give them information. We do that pro bono to help them, but to guide them in what you're looking at, because it becomes very sophisticated as you start to think on it. You don't want a failed hotel, but from my own experience as I look at it, if there aren't 1 or 2 hotels being considered on the horizon, I think it's a missed opportunity. Just because of what's going on now in tourism creates that, and the tax dollars can be tremendous, simply tremendous of what you realize. And then there's also restaurants. So thinking about the segments of restaurants, and limited type of restaurants here do quite well. They eclipse the fine dining, and that's what you're dealing with. That's fine. But there's ways of concentrating on both at the same time, where you can go in and for whatever reasons makes one really do well, that's what you want to accentuate. And with the other one, you find out things that make it do well, you accentuate it. Tremendous ability. When I look at them nationally, when you look at cities that start to really burgeon and really take a place in tourism, those are it. They've looked at their hotels and they've looked at their restaurants, and restaurants can really do it. And also, I would encourage the city to look at the press they get and how that's orchestrated. So there's nothing that can define too small of an objective to simply get in the press about restaurants. So we did that with New Orleans, where we started small and built it. Well, when Travel and Leisure in 2017 declared New Orleans to be number 1 in the nation for fine dining, we knew that seminal work had worked, and that after that, we couldn't lose. The restaurant sales just went off the charts, and restaurants burgeoned and just went wild with creation. And then, how do you test that? How do you say, well, that was a viable maneuver, we did well with it? Well, you look at attrition of restaurants, and for those of you that study restaurants, you know they have a very small shelf life. You make it the first year, you've done very well. Don't look at those unbelievable figures like 300% failure rate. It's false. Is it 50% failure rate for restaurants nationally on a national basis? Yes. So you want them to be successful. So that's what we looked at, the success rate. Well, we beat the whole nation in that. So the growth merited coming on. So that's what you want to look at. You don't want to step on your toes ever, hotels and restaurants, but you get to a realistic measure of what you can do and what the growth is going to be, and then how you capture that over time. But you have great potential there, and I'm not telling you to run out and do unbelievable things with it, but look at it and see what's possible. You happen to have some great restaurateurs in the area, so gauging on whether they want to add more into that, but talking to a few of the restaurateurs, here it is. They welcome other restaurants, because that's how you build a restaurant mecca as a city. You have to have a critical mass of restaurants in order to be a heavy attraction. Now, hotels are a little different. You've got time, so you pose a great question, but once again, I'll go back to that statement. If you're not looking at 1 or 2 hotels now to increase by, and I'm not telling you the segment to do it in, I'm not telling you which one, but I would tell you, don't make it a luxury restaurant, hotel.
Yeah.
Upscale, yes. Luxury, no. It's the hardest thing to run.
Yeah, it is.
It's the hardest thing to drop a positive bottom line on. No. You can
Do
look
that
at
for
some of the
Newport.
finest locations, yeah. So that's just a little background on that.
So, is that something that you'd be interested in looking at, is trying to start a
Well,
discussion?
absolutely, with the expansion of 79, I mean, I know hotels have been talked about down there, Joe, so I'm assuming there's gonna be at least one added there, and I would think one maybe down towards the south end, there's been talk about
Okay.
going
So
forward.
it's on your radar?
Oh, yeah. I was on our radar the other day, we were talking to some people looking at 79 about a hotel. Absolutely prime spot.
I have just one more question, I don't want to, so you have this initial, I will call it initial report, because obviously there's still a lot more data you wanna collect, you wanna, do some research on it. What's the next step in this process?
Paul, why don't you talk about some of the work you're doing right now that's happening?
Well, we're starting to look at more, what are we going to do for actually trying to bump up, how can I put this, the community chest of data. So for example, the restaurateurs have been, made positive noises about sharing their records of who comes and when, and what are their zip codes, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of confidentiality issues with that. Nobody wants to actually reveal exactly what their revenues are, for example, or what are the, what did they order, right? That kind of stuff. So we have to be very cautious with that. And analytically, it's kind of a challenge too. Once you get the data, what do you actually do with that? But that's one of the areas where we think that we could actually get a lot of insight. Because if you actually start to chart out when people come and you have their zip codes, and then you can sort of see the seasonality swings, then you can start to say, well, here's the high period where we're actually too busy, we couldn't use any more business, or here's a trough where we could actually use more business, and then that's where you want to put the promotions and the cross marketing, those kinds of things.
I guess this is for Patty and the mayor. What are your next steps? That's great, the research, because there seems to be.
But we have to
right up there.
triple secret,
Yeah.
people are just very sensitive
Sure,
about
yeah.
that data.
Yeah, so I guess with this report, and I'm obviously events are going on, and
Yeah.
you weren't waiting for anything to mention.
Absolutely.
But as far as, with the ARPA money and that whole contract with the city, what is, taking this data, what is your next step?
Well, I can say that just from a summer perspective, because I'm just finishing putting into place a summer advertising campaign that has a lot of different elements to it. Again, we had bi-weekly meetings with UMass Dartmouth, so I didn't just get the report and then I had some inkling along the way. So I used that data to help figure out what we were going to do for the summer. And we have some, like for instance, regionally up to a 60-minute drive, we've got some advertisements on the Boston commuter rail. We're doing radio, we're doing some geo-targeted ads. I really took what nuggets they could, and I think the biggest nugget, which was a really strong assumption that I had about us, our culinary attraction, that I've really doubled down on that. And I think also just finding ways, to engage different kinds of culinary, and not just having them go to restaurants, but having some of the smaller businesses, bakeries and whatnot. We've just got so much, and I think also one of the big things that we did is we really refocused. VivaFallRiver.com right now is the city's tourism-facing website. So now it's got a different look to it. It's a little bit more polished. It's and we want to track and see where we're getting, I'm sure there are going to be people from here who are still going to look at our events calendar, but I'm really looking for those people from outside the region, and I want to track those numbers. And for instance, right now we have a really limited campaign, and again, I want to just try things without, really, you got to just try it and see how it works. We have a really great promotion in, it's a contest through Local IQ, and it's in Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. We're actually really popular in Pennsylvania, which is amazing. And it's going on for about a month, and we've gotten some over 5,000 entries, and these are all people now who can opt in, and they've opted into different businesses, and so now we're building a database. And then that's where it's coming into quarterly newsletters, what's going on in Fall River, come take a trip. So it's all building. So the summer has been really exciting, lots of Google ads, and now I'm starting to look toward fall and holiday. And coming up with some ideas, because I do restaurants for sure. We can have people eat all year long, but also just trying to activate the city during those times, because especially with this weather, our summer season's like this now. So, but we've got lots of things to do. So really, kind of, I'm going to turn my eye to historical tourism next year.
I think what we're doing is just foundational work. I think when you added Patty Rigo, excuse me, our events person, Samantha Barboza, who we now have on board, partnering with UMass Dartmouth and the tourism, both survey and proposals going forward. We're just laying the foundation for where we go from here. And taking all these things and seeing what works and what doesn't is going to guide us going forward, and getting some of the data that Patty was just referring to from other states. Why do people, remember last year we did that five off of 195.
Take 5 off
yeah.
195,
It
which
was
we're doing again.
You're doing it again.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get people to look at us, and while at the same time our focus is improving the quality of life for everybody in the city. That's what we're going to do. We're going to try to improve our streets, improve our lookability. These are things that are going on, whether it's 79, our schools, our parks. But these, again, Joe, to be specific, this is just a foundation. When we build up to where we're going to be, it won't be in 23, but I have great vision for 30, 31. I'll be long gone. But at the same time, if we can do the foundational work for people to come in here and say, oh, this is the way to go. Fall River's got a vision, it's got a dream, we'll keep it going. All set?
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everybody. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.